Hi everyone, it's Misty here. Welcome back to the ScrapbookPal.com YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be making a soft and pastel watercolor Christmas card using the Under the Tree stamp set from Pinkfresh Studio, along with the Christmas lights die and the quilted cover plate, both from Hero Arts and Honeybee Stamps. So I am starting with a piece of watercolor paper in my Misty, and you could probably see that this stamp had already been well loved. Since I was using white embossing powder for this project, I wasn't quite worried about the ink being a color. But if you're going to be using clear or something, you want to make sure that you really get your stamp good and clean before you stamp. So I just stamped on this using Versamark, and then I added some Lawn Fawn white embossing powder, and I'm just melting that with my heat tool. I love heat embossing. It's so impactful. I love it, love it, love it. So I am going to be sharing with you how to do some shimmery watercolor. So this is a Nuvo shimmer pen, and it's empty of its solution, but it's not empty of glitter. And this will work on the Spectrum Noir pen. This will work on the Wink of Stella pen. Once the solution is gone, there is still shimmer left. So this is what I love to do. I love to fill the barrel with just some plain water. And I use these and ink pads to watercolor. So that's what we're doing today. So this is just my Tim Holtz water bottle that I keep on my desk, and I keep an eyedropper close by. I removed the center part, and I'm just adding water until it's just about full. You could probably try to use alcohol. I don't know how well that would work. Again, I just like the watercolor look, and today I'm going to be doing some simple watercoloring, like I'm not going to add any shading, etc. But in the past, I have actually done like a really soft layer and then added more color going forward. So, and there you can see I added a little too much, but that's okay. It's shimmery, it's beautiful, and it's so good. So I am actually going to be coloring with some distressed oxides. I'm going to color my tree with Tattered Rose, and there you can see I just squeezed the bottle like I would if I was adding it to an image. And yeah, so I am just picking up the color with the brush pen and coloring in the lines. So I had this tilted because 43-year-old eyes. A 43-year-old who probably needs bifocals but doesn't have them quite yet. I needed to be able to see this, and also with white on white, it can be a little bit hard. So if you tilt it, you'll be able to see it so much better. And you can see here that this Tattered Rose is just a beautiful soft pink for a Christmas tree. This reminds me of, I want to say like in the 50s and 60s they had soft trees this color, or it reminds me of those bottle brush trees. I don't know. I absolutely loved it. And if you're someone who follows me on the Jolly Fat Elf channel, you probably know that I am a huge fan of non-traditional Christmas colors. Like, I will craft in red and green, but I like to push the envelope when it comes to color and the holidays. And I just think this color palette of, you know, a rose, we're using Tattered Rose, I'm using shaded lilac, tumbled glass, and then shabby shutters. I just think this soft pastel color palette is beautiful for the holidays. It turned out soft and pretty and almost monochromatic without it being a completely white card. So I just have some ink, I'm just smooshing the ink on some acrylic blocks. I love doing this as well because it cleans right up. And if your blocks get dirty, you can almost always throw them into the dishwasher, and that's what I like to do. So I'm going to use these colors to color my ornaments, and there you can see I'm just squeezing out a little bit of the new water solution, and I'm just going in, and again, just doing some really simple coloring. I'm not adding any, special shading. I'm not going back in for second and third coats. I'm just adding one layer. So you could possibly get away with using regular paper, like a really heavyweight paper like Nina Solar White, like if you have the 100 or the 110 pound, the distress watercolor paper would work as well. I just had some watercolor paper in my stash and that's what I used. And I'm using the smooth side. You could also use the rough side if you wanted a bit more texture. And then I'm going to end up moving this because I'm like, wait a minute, why am I trying to cross over and do all the things? And so, yeah. But again, and this is the Wendy Vecchi-Make art. I have linked, along with all the rest of the supplies, the one that ScrapbookPal.com carries is the smaller one. If I knew a smaller one had it existed, I probably would have bought that. This is a little big and bulky, and I'm not a scrapbooker, so like I don't need anything that'll hold 12 by 12. But I didn't even know that existed when I bought this one. I'd seen a couple of accounts on Instagram use this and I was really intrigued and I really love it. But again, I think the 7-inch, if you aren't, like I said, if you're not a scrapbooker or if you don't make huge 12 by 12 projects, I don't know that you need one this huge. And again, all supplies are linked down below. What I love also about using these brush pens is I almost always have a very fine tip, so it makes getting into the small crevasses really easy. There are bows on these presents that are really, really thin lines. There's also some holly and berries that are also kind of thin, so it makes it pretty easy to get in to those areas in color. You could also use the solution and then use a regular paintbrush if you wanted to do that. If you have an even smaller detail brush that you want to use, you can absolutely do this the same way. It's just, number one, you get to stretch. Like I have a Wink of Stella pen that I've been using for probably 3 years. I just keep adding water to it and the shimmers keeps coming out. So I could probably refill this pen 10, 15, 20 times and continue to use it. And that's really what I love about this technique. You can't really tell now on the video, but once at the end, when we get to the end, I'm going to share with you just how beautiful it is in real life. It's also very pretty when you're doing something that has a bit more saturation. Like here I'm using some really soft pastels, but if you use the new flamingo color, or if you were to use like a purple, like that new one that just came out, oh, so pretty. I don't have any more room on my storage, but I may have to buy another storage container just so I can get some of the newer distressed colors. Okay, so this honeybee quilted cover plate works like an embossing folder, except it's not a folder, it's a die. So I'm just going to run that through my die cutting machine, and then I'm going to bring in another piece of paper and the Sizzix 6x6 adhesive sheets. These are a must-have for me. So this die from Hero Arts die cuts very thin, very delicate lines. And I knew I would destroy it if I tried to use any kind of liquid glue. So I just prefer to use these sheets. Now the center will cut out and it'll be a pretty big chunk. I save that. I just put it to the side, and if I need white and I want adhesive backing on it, I can use it that way. So you just take off the one side, you adhere that to your cardstock, then you run your die through. Depending on your die cutting machine, I have a Gemini Junior. I run this through probably 3 or 4 times. If you're using a thinner paper than I am, I think this is 110 pound from Nina, which is what I like for my card bases. You're gonna need to run it through more than once. So I normally just do it until I can see that it's die cut all the way through on the back. And here you can see me pulling away that middle. And again, it's a pretty big size sheet, but these always get used. So there's always some kind of little die that's just easier for me to use when it has the adhesive already on the back. If you're someone who has mobility issues in your hands, I have rheumatoid arthritis plus osteoarthritis in my hands. It makes it so much easier than me trying to fiddle with little dots of glue, and I end up getting it everywhere. So this just works out a little bit better for me. I'm just using my scissors to punch out whatever is remaining, and then we're going to put this on top of that quilted Coverplate. Now this measures 4¼ by 5½. So if you put this on a card base, it's going to take up the entire card front. And there you can see kind of what my vision is for this card. I wanted something that was really monochromatic. I wanted a background that would add dimension and just beauty without taking over and really letting the image and the sentiment shine. So this is a very, very, very delicate die. So you want to just be careful when you pull off the back of the backing sheet, but and then you'll be able to move some of the lights and stuff around if you need to. And here I realized one or two of them I hadn't taken off their backer sheet, so I got that taken care of. So now that I have that adhered and I removed the one remaining backer sheet, I'm going to set this to the side and we're going to bring in some vellum and work on our sentiment. So initially I thought I was going to heat emboss this in silver, so that's why you see me prepping this for heat embossing, and then I use Versamark ink. But then I decided that I wanted to use the shaded lilac. So if you wanted to use shaded lilac to emboss, you don't need the Versamark because these are pigment inks and they stay wet a little bit longer. So you would have plenty of time to put your embossing powder on without having to add the Versamark underneath. So I'm just adding on some clear embossing powder from Fawn, and then we're going to get that heated. You're going to want to make sure that you get your heat get your heat gun really, really hot before you take it to the vellum, because you want your heat gun on there as little time as possible. So it's hard to see this, but I just used one of the sentiments from that stamp set, and I absolutely love it. So now it's time to do the die cutting. So I'm bringing in the tree. So this is one big die cut, but it cuts the present out. So this will end up being 3 pieces. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and run this through my die cutting machine. I want to pop this up, so I'm using some foam squares from Scrapbook Adhesive, and I'm just adding several to the back. I always like to add more adhesive. I know some people don't like to use that much, but I like to. I also sell my cards, so I want to make sure that they arrive to the recipient very intact, very safe and very intact. So I'm just going to take off the backer sheets for this, and we're going to get this adhered in the middle. I just keep this little bowl, I think I got it at the Dollar Tree, on my desk to try to catch those little pieces. They still end up all over the house, but I do my best. So my goal is going to be to wrap the sentiment around the card layer, and then we'll get this adhered to a card base. So you saw me there just kind of figure out where it's going to go. I went ahead and folded it so it would have some creasing, and then I put it together, but then almost everything is crooked for me. So I'm going to go ahead and get that adhered to a card base. And again, this background is exactly 4¼ by 5½. So it's going to take up the entire card front. And then last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and add on the present. So that's it for today's card. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know down below if you've ever tried this technique of coloring with a shimmer pen. Like I said, it'll work for Wink of Stella, it'll work for the Spectrum Noir, it works for the Nuvo like I've used. And here I'm going to show you what this looks like with a flashlight shined on. And you can really see the sparkle and the shine, because look at that. It's just so pretty. I love it so much. So thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.